and welcome to the Winchester Archives Supernatural Podcast. I'm Ed.
I'm Brooke.
Today we're discussing Season 1, Episode 7, The Hook Man. Before we get started, though, here's a quick spoiler warning. As always, we'll be connecting dots across the entire series. So if you're watching Supernatural for the first time and haven't finished the series, consider this your heads up, because we will be spoiling a lot of things. And also, before we get started, an explicit content warning. As always, we are adults, talking about an adult show that deals with dark and sensitive topics, expect adult language, mature discussion, and dark humor sometimes.
Yes, so changing up our flow a little bit just to see, what works and what doesn't. We're jumping right into the episode specs and synopsis of the episode. So the air date for this one was October 25th, 2005. And it was written by John Schreiben and is directed by David Jackson. And our supporting cast is Jane McGregor as Laurie Sorensen. With that said, this week we are adventuring into a small town, a small college town in Iowa. Dean sees an article in the paper about a girl, Laurie, who swears something invisible killed her boyfriend, Rich. So now the brothers are on a hunt for a murderous urban legend with a fashion statement, but he has a hook as a hand. So what do the brothers do? They crash some frat parties, melt down way too much silver, and try to not get arrested while hunting the world's most aggressively judgmental, vengeful spirit, who is actually a violent spirit.
Very good synopsis of the whole episode.
Thank you. All right. And before we get into the little details, just remember you can listen to us on all major podcast platforms and watch along on YouTube. And if you'd like to support the show, you can head over to our Patreon at patreon.com/Winchester Archives Podcast. There are a lot of perks, including our Discord community and monthly digital art made by one of our very good friends, and and access to the archive addendum, which are bonus episodes.
And as always, we are accepting stories for our field research episodes that we have planned as well. Where we'll share our stories written by our listeners. So if you have any hometown legends, ghost hunting stories, cryptids encounters, or anything else in your supernatural life, send them our way, winchesterarchivespodcast@gmail.com. We're also on Instagram and TikTok at Winchester Archives Pod. And also, like we said last week, please rate us 5 stars on every platform that you see, like, subscribe, all that fun stuff. It helps push us out to more people and lets us build more of a larger community of archivists. So, yeah, do that. But now, let's get into the rest of the episode, the breakdown, the play-by-play, and we can discuss some of the fun stuff in this episode and some of the stuff that probably doesn't age super well.
Right. So I actually have a fun fact to start us out with. And that is, this is the 7th episode of the first season, but it was actually filmed the 3rd instead of Dead in the Water. But for this episode, they had to do some reshoots, including the scene with the boyfriend in the truck. They actually had to recast because the first actor wasn't creepy enough.
That's
He was
wild.
just a little too innocent.
It worked out. The new guy was put on the creepy moves for sure.
He did.
And if only this was the 3rd episode instead of Dead in the Water, because Dead in the Water was my least favorite one so far.
Which says something because it wasn't too bad. Now, getting into the recap, I thought it was kind of cool. I don't remember it, but I wrote down it was cool.
Yeah, it was a good, like I said, they're starting to figure out how to do the recaps better, I think.
hmm So now we enter the POV of sorority sisters from the Theta sorority at Eastern Iowa University. Lori is getting ready for a date, and her friend gives her a new shirt to wear because the one
Mhm.
she was wearing like a pinstripe button up, and her friend was like, "No, wear this," and it's like a lacy tank top.
Mhm.
She and the date pull up under the bridge, and Lori asks if they were going to a party. Like, she's like, "Well, I thought we were going to a party." And then her boyfriend says, "Well, we can't arrive on time," which was very
Yeah.
creepy.
Yeah, definitely immediately you know exactly where this is going, basically. Getting perved on by the horny college kid.
Right. And her dad is actually calling her, but she ignores it and starts making out with her boyfriend. He tries to do a little more, and she says no. And his response is, "It's okay."
Not like
Gross.
comforting, not like being like, yeah, it's okay. Okay, cool. You're like, that's your boundary right now. He's just like, it's okay. Like, let's keep going anyway. Like, oh, clearly he doesn't want it.
Yes, exactly. And I said, "I hate this man," but apparently so does Hookman because he coming.
Hmm. And he really does a number to this truck, which I thought was a really fun effect.
They hear something screeching along the metal on, like, the road signs, and instead
Mhm.
of leaving, the dumb boyfriend gets out of the car
Which you
to
never do.
see.
You just back out. You just go home or go to the party.
Mhm.
Just get out of there.
And then he sees his car being scraped by invisible something invisible, and then the tire blows. So the Hookman is invisible, apparently.
Yeah, and like the scrape is more of like a gouge. Like it's a cool like cut that goes
Mhm.
into it.
Now, at this point, Lori is smart enough to lock the door and roll up the windows, but she can't stop someone with a hook. She does end up getting out of the car to run away, but then she turns around to see her boyfriend hanging from a rope by his feet above the car.
Yeah, which is wild. The wild visual. Wild way to start an episode.
Yeah, and it really gave me like 80s slasher vibes.
Yeah, very much so. And
Um,
like it's very immediately apparent what's going on with like the hook man. It's actually like interesting. This whole episode's very accurate on terms of like the hook man lore for the most part. But basically, at least like the starting part here, like that's why I put this part here to discuss because like this part is basically the setup for the entire lore of like the
Okay.
modern day folklore of it, the urban legend. But it's basically about a killer who has escaped, usually escaped a mental asylum or like something, or on the run, who has a hook for a hand and attacks couples usually in a parked car. And many descriptions, depictions of the event, it's usually they hear like a radio broadcast saying like, "Hey, there's a murderer out on this lane." It's like, "Oh, that's where we are."
Mhm.
But it usually involves a couple like this that are trying to hook up or make out on a in a parked car somewhere, and it's usually described as a silhouetted old man in a raincoat and a hat, which is very fitting because this is exactly what this one looked like. And also usually it has like the face obscured, which again, this one is the shadow basically. So basically does that for us too. So it's like a really good description too. But yeah, basically they decide they need to, usually the way the story goes is once they hear about like the serial killer that's on the loose with the hook, they decide, let's go not here. Let's
Mhm.
go away. And
Smart.
basically once they get back to the woman's house, they see a hook that is either hanging from the door or like embedded into the door itself or like somewhere. So as in like the hook man was about to get him, but then they drove away and they ripped his hook off. Um,
How ominous.
yeah, pretty horrifying. Even like and the fun thing is some of them actually have depictions of them like hearing the scraping sound on the car door, like kind of like what they did in this episode. And then like yeah, so usually it's basically that. Like either that or sometimes they see the figure and they bolt away quickly and it's fine. The other way this kind of goes is that they basically the woman would see the hook man and say something to the boyfriend. The boyfriend would be like, who's, super horny or something, is like, oh, it's nothing. You didn't see anything. So then they get out and go to check it out. But then, like, usually instead of the man getting murdered, he comes back and sees the woman murdered. Overall, very accurate to the depictions of this first little bit here. So I thought that was neat.
Yeah, except it was flipped. It was the boy that died and
Yeah,
not the girl.
exactly.
And now we're in the POV of the brothers, and I found something very interesting via the subtitles. So if you remember how I told you a while ago that back in the day before like AI, if they wanted closed captioning for TV, the studio would submit the script to the network, and the network would just upload or transcribe the script to TV.
Hmm.
So if there was any improvisions, that didn't make it into the subtitles.
That's funny.
So, yes. So this is what is said in episode. Dean says, "Your half calf double vanilla latte is getting cold over here, Francis." And then Sam says, "Bite me." But the subtitles, Dean says, "Here's your half cap venti vanilla latte getting cold over here, Francis." And then Sam says, "Shut up."
Slight inconsistencies, but the other one feels a little bit more natural, I feel like,
It
especially the bite
does.
me, like, feels very fitting for these 2.
Yeah, I rewatched it like 3 times. Like I kept hitting like the 15-second back button and I was like, what? Something's not right.
That's funny.
But Sam was actually on a payphone talking to somebody before Dean
Mhm.
says that to him. And then he goes back to Dean and he said he's checked for all the John Does in the area and no one is in the hospitals or no one has seen anyone that has their dad John's description. And Dean just says, Dad doesn't want to be found.
I mean, either that or he's, like, in trouble, one of the 2.
And now Dean pulls up the newspaper article about the creepy boyfriend dying. And what's so funny is in this episode, you and I both clocked it, is Sam is the one saying the attacker being invisible doesn't mean it's their kind of case, and Dean is saying it is, which, like,
Mhm.
last episode, it was opposite.
Yeah, the exact opposite.
Either way, now they're on their way to Iowa, which Dean says is 100 miles away from wherever they currently are. And now they're at the dead guy's frat house. They are posing as frat brothers from Ohio, and they just need a place to stay. And then they enter a room with a guy who is painting himself purple.
It is wild to me how well this works, and it kinda just, like, shows, like, the level of, intelligence that these guys are running off of right now. I feel like that they're just,
Mhm.
like, able to walk in and be like, "Yep, we're exchange students from Ohio," and it's like, "Yep, good enough for me. Here's your dorm room." Like, what?
Yes. No like secret words or handshakes or
Not even that,
anything.
just, like, no registration, no, like, you know, school saying that, "Yes, you are now here," like, nothing. It's just these random strangers are like, "Hey, I'm part of this now."
So the purple guy is like they walk in, right? And the purple guy is just like, "Hey, get my back. It's a big game today." And
Yeah,
then
just
Dean
painting himself purple for the football team or whatever.
I'll get to that in a second because that's weird. But then anyway, Dean points to Sam and he's like, "He's the artist, the things he can do with the brush."
I love that.
And
Just throwing him under the bus like that.
yes. And they're asking this guy about the dead guy and his girlfriend. So we find out Lori is the Reverend's daughter. And naturally, here Dean wants to go see the church.
Mhm.
But again, like they always do, they have a way of showing up at exactly the wrong time, right in the middle of the sermon about Rich's passing.
Awkward.
Yes. And it's also weird to see the brothers praying, like both of them
Mhm.
did. And Lori's father told them afterwards that he liked seeing young people open to the Lord's message,
Mhm.
which is
Which is very
really,
fitting.
it is. And it's very interesting, you know, because of how the rest of the whole series goes.
Yeah, exactly, since it goes, like, very heavily into, like, Christian mythology, so it's wild that it ends up being that way.
They really learn the Lord's message.
They are open to the Lord's message, i.e., their whole lives.
And now at this point, Lori says it is Sunday night. So my question is, what game is today? They are in Iowa in like February. Football is in the fall and college football is on Saturday.
Maybe it's, like, basketball because I can't think of another sport that in college would be, like, big a deal enough that people would paint their bodies a color for. I guess, like, maybe hockey.
Yeah, I didn't do research on sports, but I do know for a fact football is not on a Sunday in February when you're in college.
Yeah.
So,
It's gotta be something like something like a basketball or a hockey or something along those lines. That might be more in the fall or in the early, beginning of the year.
mhm, yes, exactly. But also when they're back in the church, Sam and Lori immediately lock eyes.
Gotta set
And
up that romance early in the episode.
yes, and both brothers think she's very attractive. But Sam says there's more to it than that, and he just knows she's telling the truth. And he thinks it's the Hookman legend. Sam says it might not be a man, but a spirit. So now they're at the library with all the arrest records of this town going back to 1851.
I think it's a very good, assumption that it's the Hookman legend based off of, again, it being very accurate to the Hookman legend,
Based on
and the fact that
every
he's invisible, probably a spirit. So I feel like this is a pretty easy layup.
right, Sam wasn't making any big moves guessing
Mhm,
this stuff. Okay, but wait, we have a small discussion here.
mhm.
So Dean has this piece of dialogue that says, "This is how you spent 4 years of your life, huh?" And Sam says, Welcome to higher education. So
Mhm.
this tells me he was in fact in college for 4 years and him and Dean lost contact 2 years ago
Mhm.
because basically, I remember in episode one when they talked about not talking in 2 years, we were like, okay, so did Sam, was he smart enough to just skip 2 years of college? And then he moved away. And then it's been mentioned before where Dean is like, well, the last 2 years you were off doing this and that. And like, I wasn't. And that's why he has some envy. And then
Mhm.
last episode, we talked about Dean distancing himself so Sam wouldn't get hurt and he would join. He only got Sam at the last minute
Mhm.
when like he had no other options about finding John. And to me, this confirms it that like Dean stepped away. Like he
Yeah.
tried keeping in contact for the first 2 years. And then after that, he was like, I'm going to let my brother try to live his life.
Mhm. Which is very fitting, and again, it works with all their character motivations up till now too, so that makes the most
Mhm.
sense to me of what's going on too.
Yes. I hate that it took 7 episodes in to like draw this conclusion, but at least we did it.
We're uncovering the clue drops as they go.
So, they're looking through all their papers, and Sam found somebody from 1862 named Jacob Carnes. And he was a preacher that was arrested for murdering 13 sex workers. Some were in their beds, and others were hung upside down from the trees.
Like we saw in the opening, what are the odds?
Mhm. And he murdered them with a silver hook,
Dun, dun, dun. Hookman.
all on 9 Mile Road, which is where they were when Rich was killed. And at this point, Dean says, "Nice job, Dr. Vinkman," which Dr. Vinkman is Bill Murray's character in Ghostbusters.
Yeah, I love all, like, the pop culture references that Dean always does because that's just, like, what he does is, like, watch TV.
Hmm.
He just has, like, all of these random asides that are references to various TV shows and movies and stuff,
Yes,
and music.
exactly. So now we're seeing Lori and her dad in the car, and Lori's getting dropped off at her sorority house. And her dad has all the stereotypical preacher
Mhm,
father vibes. Like he doesn't want his adult daughter to live her life because it is sinful.
mhm.
And he's not worried about her safety on a college campus where a murderer is running around, but instead he's worried about her partying and being slutty.
Which is wild. Like, how are you not
Mhm,
worried about the fact that her boyfriend was murdered with her?
mhm.
Even if it wasn't some invisible thing, if it was a person, like, what? How are you worried about, like and he just, like, says it in the most weird ways, like, "I know what goes on in there," like, and it's just like, what do you think goes on in there? Do you agree with Dean later on in this episode, which we'll get to?
Probably.
Like,
Yeah,
what kinda 80s stereotype?
like, I thought when he was like, "I'm worried about you," I was like, "Oh, well, yeah, that's reasonable because there was a murderer," and then he was like,
Yeah,
"Because of the partying and wearing those clothes and that roommate of yours," and I was like, "What?"
yeah. Wild stuff, man.
But anyway, she says, like, "I'm an adult and I'm gonna live the life I want," and she gets out of the car and
Mhm.
goes inside, and as she's walking down the hallway, she actually stops to see a hook scratch on the wall. It is very ominous, and
Yeah, maybe you
she
should pay attention to that.
yeah, she kind of writes it off as like no big deal. So now we cut back to Sam and Dean, and they are pulling up to the 9 Mile Road bridge. I have some things to ask about. So
Yeah.
now they're using rock salt and bullets. And Sam says, "Did you and dad think of this?" And Dean says, "You don't have to be a college grad to be a genius." Okay, all of that's
Mhm.
fair. But then in episode one, when Dean shot the lady in white, they had made it seem like he had never, ever, ever shot a ghost before with any
Yeah.
type of bullet. But now he knew all along they could use rock salt.
Yeah. It in canon, like, in universe, it makes no sense, but
Mhm.
the only way it makes sense is as, like, a writing thing where they, like, didn't know where they were gonna go with it. Now they're actually starting to flesh out their lore and make it actually make some sense. Because, like, in
Mhm.
universe, I cannot for the life of me think of a reason why he shot them with the ghost with a normal bullet, unless he was like, "We don't have rock salt," or like, I don't have access to it quick, and I need to make a decision right this second." So he shot and, like, hoped the regular bullet would do enough, which is like
Mhm.
the closest thing I could do, like to get there. But I feel like even that's kind of a stretch.
Because even Sam says, like, "Why did you shoot Casper in the face?" And then Dean says, like, "Well, it worked," or something like that. Like, well, he
Yeah.
says it saved your ass. Like, he didn't explain the
Mhm.
rock salt thing, so it just kinda seemed like he was improvising.
Yeah. That's what I mean. Like I think the only way to make it make sense is that he just like couldn't get to the rock salt and he had to make a quick choice. But also, why wouldn't you have the rock salt ready when you knew it was a ghost?
Or I guess the only other thing I can think of is in this time him and Sam have been together, Dean thought of this idea. So when Dean says, like, "Did you and dad think of this?" Dean is saying, like, of course he did, not him and dad did,
Oh.
but I also feel like that's stretching it.
Yeah, but that one's a, like a that one I could see that. Just with the dialogue, it makes it not as like it's not as clear, but you could twist it that way. That's fun.
And that also makes it seem like he's never done it before, but they're gonna try it this time.
Yeah. And also like the
So
rock salt like shots actually make a lot of sense too in terms of lore. We kind of already went over this in the first episode when we talked about salt being a purifying thing, but it is used as like a protective thing against ghosts and evil spirits. So in theory, it would like make sense that if you shot it through a ghost because the ghosts are using whatever around them to like keep them make them manifest where they are, right?
mhm,
So that this thing that's purifying and prevents evil spirits when you shoot it through them, it like would disrupt their current form a bit, which is basically what it does in the entire Supernatural series. It doesn't actually kill a ghost or like hurt them really. It just kind of stuns
mhm,
them, like it makes them have to reappear basically. So they go away
mhm.
temporarily or like get knocked away from where they're currently attacking, have to reappear somewhere else. So like it kind of it makes sense in terms of my opinion on like how salt works against ghosts and stuff and most other folklore.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it's a big stretch to say this would work.
And I also thought it was a very clever thing by the showrunners to be like, "Oh, now they can still shoot at ghosts." Like, you can still do the cool action thing of shooting at the bad guy, and now
Mhm.
it makes sense,
Exactly.
which is fun.
Yes. So now the boys hear a noise behind the trees, and Sam is the one that has the shotgun. I really don't remember what Dean was holding, but either way, they point it at the tree.
I think it was a flashlight.
Oh, that would make sense. But out of the trees comes the small town sheriff. He was waiting for somebody to come back to the crime scene.
You know, smart.
Now we cut back to Lori's dorm room, and she sees her roommate sleeping, and she looks at her and sees her eyes closed, and then she's like,
Mhm,
"Taylor, are you sleeping?" Like, "Okay, but thank you for confirming for the audience. She is
mhm,
asleep." And then she lays down in bed and the camera pans up and you see Hookman behind Lori's door, like, watching her sleep.
mhm.
And then she wakes up in the next morning, and this shot is just so cool because she kinda hears something, and then she rolls over and looks on the floor and sees, like, blood droplets. And then she looks up a little higher and sees, like, a pool of blood. And then she looks up again and sees her whole roommate is just, like, blood in her bed. And then there's writing on the wall that says, "Aren't you glad you didn't turn on the light?" And, like,
Horrifying.
when we see the hook man behind the door, it's just so cool because we are led to believe the hook man just was, like, watching her sleep, and then that horrifying thing happens.
Yep. And like another really interesting thing I found with this is they decided to combine two urban legends of the Hook Man, and then this exact scene is a common urban legend story as well, where basically it happens the exact same way that it does in Supernatural, where a college student comes back from her dorm, the lights are off, and instead of waking up their sleeping roommate, they keep the lights off and just go to bed. And then in the morning, they see their dead roommate with the message, "Aren't you glad you didn't turn the lights on?" written on the wall in their blood, basically implying the same thing that there's like some creeper in the bedroom that murdered her roommate, but then like thought it was creepier to fuck with her and leave her
Mhm.
alive, which is kind of fucked.
Yes,
It's a horrible urban legend, but I thought I got a kick out of the fact that they combined the two urban legends into like a consistent thing, or like they did both.
mhm.
I was like, oh, that's neat. Well, episodes
Yeah,
just urban legends, I guess.
it is, and it still gives, like, the '80s slasher vibe, like, we could be
Yeah,
right in Friday the 13th
for sure.
or, like, Halloween or something, it's, like,
Yeah.
so similar. So now we cut back to the brothers, and they're exiting the police station.
Hmm.
And Dean says he got Sam's charges dropped down to a fine.
Mhm.
And he told the sheriff Sam was a dumb-ass pledge and he had a prank. And he he was like, "We told him ghosts are repelled by rock salt."
Yeah,
And Sam says, "And he believed you?" And then Dean says, "Well, you look like a dumbass pledge."
I know, I love that. That was such fun banter, and also it's hilarious because he just tells him the truth, but that truth sounds so absurd that it would be, like, something that college kids would do as, like, a joke.
Yes, exactly. But then as they're getting into their car, which I really don't know how their car is there at the police station, but nonetheless, it's there. And all of the cops come running out of the building as fast as they can. And they get in their cars and like drive away as fast as possible.
Mhm.
So Sam and Dean follow because they're nosy.
Of course, yeah.
And now Lori's dad is there to take her home. Like they're in the back of EMS and he's like, I need to take her home. And then the cop is like, can't ignore she's now connected to 2 murders, which
Yeah, in the
is
span of, like, a week.
yes, which is valid. And and I did not write down the direct quote from Lori's dad, but he mentioned something about being like a reverend of the town and he can pull strings or whatever. So then he
Mhm.
lets the reverend take her home.
Which is wild.
And he's like, just make sure she stays around for questioning.
Yeah, okay.
So while this is happening, Sam and Dean go to like the side of the house to try to break in.
Yeah, try to break into the now active crime scene.
Mhm. And Dean goes, dude, naked sorority girls, or dude, sorority girls, do you think we'll see a naked pillow fight?
Mhm.
And I'm just like, girls don't do this.
Yeah, that's what I was referring to earlier when it's just like, why what do you think happened at a sorority house? Like, I'm sure there's, like, some silly shit like that, but, like, not naked pillow fights like you'd see in, like, 80s movies. Like, that's just not a
Mhm.
thing.
Yes. Like this was a direct reference to the movie Animal House.
Yes, and, like, I get that's the point, but it's just, like, it just amused
Mhm.
me because 'cause I'm just like, "What are we talking about, Dean? Come on." But
Mhm.
it's also, again, very fitting because, again, direct reference to a modern pop culture thing, like what Dean does.
True.
He's seen Animal House, I'm sure.
Now they're on the side of this house with lots of police and EMS and the sorority girls all outside of it. And they just casually open a window and go inside. And it dumps out into like a closet or a bathroom. And then they just walk right in to the bedroom. And it was the correct bedroom to be in.
Yeah, perfect, perfect. It's like someone wrote it up,
Hmm. Not hot or anything. And then when they see the writing on the wall, Sam says that's classic Bookman legend.
which is not. They're just 2 separate urban legends that, again, in this show, they smashed together, but, like, it is not Hookman related at all.
Yeah, but it's fine. And then they, like, zoom in on the symbol on the wall, and they notice that is the same symbol on Jacob's book. So now they know it's Jacob Carn.
Which, we'll get to here in a bit, but, like, the symbol isn't that unique to the point where you'd be able to narrow it down. It's a fairly decent assumption, but we'll get to it.
Alright. Well, now they're at a house party, and Dean says, "You were holding out on me? This college thing is awesome." And then Sam says, "This wasn't really my experience." However, on the very first episode, we see him at a Halloween party.
To be fair, though, I think it was more he got dragged there. He didn't seem to be having a great time.
Well, no, because he was telling Jess he doesn't like Halloween, but I can assume he's been to others. But then Dean says library, studying, straight A's, and Sam does like a head nod. And then Dean says, what a geek, which I say is so funny, but someone doesn't get into law school by like ignoring their classes.
Yeah, I know you gotta study, go to the library, get, like, pretty much straight A's.
Yes. Especially if you want any kind of scholarships, because law school is expensive.
Mhm.
But by this point, Sam finds a pattern. Every time there are murders, they are pinned on a man who preaches about immortality. And all of the
Immorality.
yes, immorality. That's what I
Close,
meant.
but not quite immortality. Immortality, like, slightly different.
My dyslexia doing its job.
But yeah.
So all of these men said the murders happened by an invisible source. So they think either the reverend is summoning the spirit or it's like a poltergeist who is latching on to his emotions.
which we've kind of talked about before too with the angry ghost and spirits basically being able to latch on to people and or things and kind of just like hook onto them and
Uh-huh.
feed off those emotions and those, or the site itself. So makes sense.
Yes. And now Dean is trying to find the hook man's unmarked grave because this man was so discreet. What was that word? This man was so
Despise,
disgraced,
disgrace.
disgraced by the church because he murdered 13 people that they
Uh-huh.
threw him in a hole in the ground and never went back. Okay, but Dean is looking at headstones. And I'm like, Dean, that is not unmarked.
Uh-huh.
Okay, he would just be in the ground.
Yeah, he wouldn't have a headstone.
No, but nonetheless, we have to know somehow that it's this guy. And Dean hears some scary footsteps around, but nothing comes of it. And then in TV show fashion, we see a headstone with just that symbol on it.
Yeah, and like I was saying before, the symbol. This is a weird choice because this symbol is known as the Jerusalem cross, which is basically a cross with a cross in each of the corners of the cross. Um, but in Christian mythology, it's used quite often. It's usually associated with like the Crusades, of like because it's supposed to be like one of the interpretations of it is like the big cross is Jesus and the little crosses mean every corner of the world, spread the message or whatever. So it's a really commonly used symbol by like a lot of preachers and priests and things like that. So like this is one of those things where it's like in a church cemetery, this doesn't mean that that's him. Like I get that it's like the symbol has been associated with him a lot, but like this doesn't
Mm.
necessarily mean it's the guy. And
Especially,
also just to throw it in there a little bit, in modern times, this symbol's actually been co-opted by like neo Nazis to invoke the
ooh,
Crusades and basically spreading their terrible ideologies around everywhere. So one of those
jeez.
things like one of those things where it's a Christian symbol that has been co-opted by that, which is makes this one a little weird too to see on the
Uh-huh.
as like a main focal point of an episode in this year or this time re-looking at it.
Yeah, because I doubt they knew that's what it was, or it didn't mean that when this came
Yeah, it
out.
wasn't co-opted as much by it. Yeah, but again, it's still a very common Christian mythology symbol. So like, it's interesting that that was the one that's like, yep, this is that guy specifically, when
Mhm.
it could be literally anyone. I like to think that the bones that he burned are actually irrelevant to this guy, this ghost. They're just some dude's bones they burn, and then the actual thing that he's haunted to is just the hook.
Yes. Because, like we've said, he would have just been a body in the ground. Even the, like, records that Sam finds saying where he was buried probably wouldn't even exist, or it'd be, like, in this area that we know of.
Yeah, or it would just be like in this graveyard, period. Like not
Yes.
give any kind of specific. That's why I like to say in my head, Kaden, that dude was just another guy. That was just the guy's bones. It wasn't even the guy they were looking for.
Right. But, Dean gets the job done.
Mhm.
But now we're at Sam's POV, and he says he's gonna go keep an eye on Lori. He walks up to the house. Well, he actually doesn't walk up to it. He's kind of standing in front of it and looking in the window.
He's like across the street or something. He's like on a bench. So
Mhm. And he sees her and her dad fighting through the window. And Lori finds out that her dad is in love with a married woman. And
and having
he,
a bear.
yes. And he says he knows she's intending on getting a divorce. To which Lori says, Jesus Christ. And her dad says not to use that language. And this is a difficult situation.
Yeah, no,
N-
doesn't sound like very difficult to me.
No, it sounds like hypocrisy.
Yes, which is fitting.
Mhm. Now we cut back to Dean digging up the grave, and he says, That's it. Next time I get to watch the cute girl's house.
which I love because it's just like the perfect encapsulation of Dean again. It's just so good as a one
Mhm.
liner.
Yes. Then he breaks open the casket and finds the bones. Then we cut back to Sam, and Lori finds him sitting outside of her house, and she comes out to talk to him. And he tells Lori he was worried about her, so he stayed to keep an eye out on the place. And she thought that was cute and not creepy.
Mhm.
And they are now,
Well, Sam is so cute, to be fair. Like, if Sam said that to me, I'd be like, "Oh, he's looking out for me." Like, I would feel good with Sam doing that.
and then
Sam's such
you,
a good guy.
and then you would get murdered.
Yeah, probably.
But now they are bonding over the fact that everyone around them keeps dying.
That's an odd thing to bond about, but sure.
Right. And then we cut back to Dean, and he is now salting the bones and lit them on fire. And right in the middle of the graveyard. And then I like scrolled up on my timeline and was like, there's 15 minutes left of the show. Like what's happening?
Mhm.
It's not over.
Plot twist about to happen.
Fun fact, I found this out when Dean is burning the remains, the classic Star Wars blaster sound effect happens
What? Why?
because Eric Kripke is obsessed with Star Wars.
That's just wild, though. I need to rewatch that and listen back for it. That's
Yes.
hilarious.
They had very cheap like sound effects in these early seasons.
Yeah, for sure.
So now we're back to Lori, and she's telling Sam that all her dad says to do is pray and it will fix all of her problems. He doesn't give any advice ever.
Mhm. Yep.
And she tells Sam about her dad seeing a married woman, and it's a woman who goes to their church with her husband and their kids.
Yeah, that's pretty rough, bud.
Yes. And now she's questioning how her dad can preach morality when he's doing this stuff.
Every accusation is a confession
Mhm.
by people of these types who judge others. Usually they're it's just all projection.
Mhm. And now she and Sam are making out, kind of. It didn't last very long because Sam says he can't. And Lori says that she's sorry and she guesses it's about one of the people that died.
Good call.
Yes. And I also like to think, since we're talking about how good of a man Sam is, he wouldn't want to like take advantage because Lori was very vulnerable at that moment.
Yeah, for sure.
And now her dad opens the door and is like, it's time to come inside. Like he's just being a jerk. And
Mhm.
the hook man comes out of nowhere and just, like, stabs her dad in the chest and takes him
Yoink.
upstairs.
Yeah, it was a very cool, like, sudden thing that you'd be like, "Wow, wasn't expecting that,"
Mhm,
because it's just, like, out of nowhere, and it's like, "Oh god, we're going to, like, overdrive now.
mhm.
Things are escalating."
Sam, goes upstairs and is trying to help, and then he shoots the hook man with rock salt and he disappears. The dad doesn't die, but he is in the hospital.
Good job, Sam. You finally hit a shot in the first time in this series.
True.
It
Sam
just
tells
took a not moving target.
Yes. Sam tells the cop they were outside talking and her dad opened the door and the man with the hook just appeared and he hadn't seen him before, which isn't a lie,
Yeah, not a lie.
kinda.
I mean, he just didn't say that that he was a supernatural being that, like, appeared behind him. He just said the hook man appeared behind him, which isn't a lie. The truth.
True. True. And then we hear Dean say, "That's my brother. Hey, brother." And he like waves. And then the sheriff says he can let Dean through. And Dean gives the cops holding him back like the biggest side eye ever.
Yeah, it's great.
Now, when the brothers meet up again in like the middle of the hallway, he says he thinks the Hookman is actually attached to Lori. And when Lori does something, she's conflicted about, well, when somebody does something, she's conflicted about the morality of the Hookman kills them.
Yeah, like the hook man comes and punishes those that need to be punished or whatever. And yeah, it's
Mhm,
very yeah, I love the banter between them too when it comes to figuring out that it's that's the Lori and not her dad. Because they're like, I
mhm,
don't think they'd send him to attack himself. And it's just
mhm.
like valid.
Kind of, because it kind of happens later.
Yeah, that's fair.
So Dean says he burned everything in the coffin, and Sam says he must have missed something and asked if he burned the hook. And Dean was like, "What hook?"
Hmm.
And now they're having a light bulb moment about how the hook is the source of the power.
Yeah, because the bones they just burned weren't the guy they were looking for. He's just haunting the hook.
Yes. It's like they've never had to burn a special object before in all their times ghost hunting.
Yeah.
When I feel like they've talked about it in earlier episodes.
I feel like that's a common thing that they, like, kinda reference that it can haunt places and locations and things. Like, they kind of reference that it can haunt those kind of things, but also, I feel like it's also, again, just setting up, like, the lore for the audience more than anything. But in
Mhm.
universe, yeah, it seems kind of shady that they wouldn't have encountered that at some point,
Mhm. Right, or John hasn't mentioned it or something.
or they just spaced on it this time, which is also fair, I guess.
Mhm.
Or they're like, "Oh, the bones, it should be in the grave," but I guess it's not.
Well, now they're back to the library, and Sam found out the hook was actually melted down and made into something else that is at the church and the
Mhm,
house, just an ominous something else.
mhm. Or multiple something.
Yes. So now they're going to the church to look, and they decide any single thing that is silver is going into the fire. Anything.
Which makes sense.
It does not because they're just throwing it like they're like Dean was like, "I'll take the church, you take the house," or like the other way around. So I'm like, they're in this
Mhm.
person's house. We see plates and cups and like furniture and like forks. And I'm like, you really think they melted down a hook and made it into a plate
You never know.
that's in this person's house?
You never know. What if they melted down a bunch of things, the hook was just included? This was something that, I did think was interesting conversation that we kinda had a debate back and forth about. It actually included one of our other friends in it too, because we just couldn't we were thinking, like, when they melt down the hook into other things, isn't that the same thing that happens when they eventually burn the necklace? Which, again, spoiler for, like, 30 seconds from now. Uh, but when they burn the necklace, it basically just melts. So, like, if you're melting down the hook already, isn't that the same thing as, like, burning it? Like, in the sense of, like, for, like, a spirit attachment?
So what I found out from our friend, because we have it's the same friend that does our art. They're just a random knowledge pit of anything that's not useful. And actually, a lot of it's useful. But anyway, he said when you melt down metal to reforge it, you actually don't put it in the fire. It just touches the hot surface and then it's reforged. So if you're actually throwing it into the fire, maybe that's the purifier.
Yeah, that was the what we ended up coming to the conclusion of. That's why it works at the end, but not when they reforged it, was that the flames themselves are the purifying agent, so, like, that's why it wouldn't have worked when it melted down. It only
Mhm.
works at the end.
That's yeah, that's the best guess that we
Let us know
have.
what you guys think in the comments. Let us know what you think about the reforging versus putting it into the fire. Like, what's up with
Mhm.
that?
So now they are throwing things into the fire and they hear footsteps above them and they go look and it's Lori praying in church.
Mhm.
And Sam goes to talk to her. Lori is crying and praying for forgiveness because she thinks she summoned an avenging angel.
I mean, she's kinda not off, but Hookman's not really an angel, but
That's what Sam says. He says the Hookman is
mhm.
not an angel. But Lori is like on the right track.
Yeah, she totally is.
And now she's conflicted about her morality. So the Hookman is back.
Yep,
And she says she needs to be punished. So the Hookman is trying to kill her.
yep. The second she says that she should be punished for what she did, the Hookman shows up, is like, "Alright, bet."
Yeah. And Sam is just collateral damage in this fight because she
Uh-huh.
doesn't have a morality conflict about kissing a man she doesn't know.
Yeah, but
But
Sam gets caught up by the hook a little bit.
yes. And then Dean comes running up with his rock salt gun and they
Mhm.
grab her necklace. Like, cause at first they're like, that necklace, what is it? It's a cross necklace and it's a church heirloom.
I
So
love how she's so, like, hesitant to say that it's made of silver until they, like, ask her they have to, like, ask directly that it's a s it is it silver?
And she's like, "Yeah." And then Sam just, like, rips it off her neck and throws it at Dean, and then he goes and burns it.
Yeah, throws it in the fireplace.
And it's such a cool scene because as the cross burns, so does the hook man. Like, they do, like, cuts. Like, as
Yeah.
it's melting, then the hook man is, like, burning up.
Yeah, it's a really cool shot.
Mhm. And then the police are back, and Dean tells the cop they saw the man with the hook, but they fought him and he ran away. And the cop says, "Listen, you and your brother," to which Dean cuts him off and says, "Yeah, yeah, we're leaving town."
I love it. He just cuts him off before he can get kicked out. He's saying like, "Yep, we're already on the way out."
Mhm.
Also, just going back to that the cross neck was melting. We also figured out that there's no way that that fire was burning hot enough to melt silver.
Oh, we did. What did I find out? The average home fireplace burns at like 1,200 degrees Fahrenheit, and to melt pure silver would have to be at least like 17 or 1,800 degrees.
Yeah,
So,
so like that cross melting makes no sense. But it's a cool
no.
visual.
Yeah, they have God on their side.
Yeah.
So, Sam is getting checked out by medical, and Dean sees him holding Lori's hand. And when Sam goes to walk away, Lori says, "Thank you." And then as soon as Sam gets in the car, Dean says, "We could stay." And Sam shakes his head.
Which has already been proven that that's not the case. The cops are literally about to kick him out.
Yes, they can't
He's just
stay.
being nice.
But this is Sam thinking he can't get too close to anyone else because one, they will die, and two, he's not ready to move on
Yeah.
from Jess.
Yep.
And that's where it ends.
Yeah. It was overall a very fun episode.
I thought so too. But let's get into our crime counter. So their crimes this week are trespassing on a crime scene,
Again.
yeah. Trespassing in general,
Mhm.
property damage, discharging
Yeah.
a firearm in a building, grave desecration,
Mhm.
and then it's mentioned in dialogue that Sam gets a fine. So again, trespassing on a crime scene is about 1 year in jail because they didn't tamper with anything. Trespassing into the church slash Lori's home and destroying all of their silver
Yeah.
is about 4 years in prison.
Mhm.
Discharging a firearm in a building is 1 year in jail. And then Sam's fine would range anywhere from like $100 to $1,000.
Yep. That's a pretty rough go of it this time. About 6 extra years added onto the tally.
Yes.
And also, again, let us know in the comments if you found any more crimes that we missed, and we'll make sure to add them to the tally at the mid-season.
Yes, exactly. Oh, we had the exact same, well, kind of the exact same scores.
Yeah, we were pretty close. I ended up updating one of my things actually mid-record here because I was like, you know
Oh,
what? I actually think this deserves a higher score. So we'll get to it.
okay. Well, for story and pacing, we both gave it a 5. We've talked about a lot. This had a very good plot and it was engaging. It had a good structure.
Yeah, it had a fun plot twist, went back and forth. POVs all made sense, and it was good. And everything seemed like to be going along and moving along pretty quickly and pretty well, but also at the same time, like it felt like things were allowed to like breathe a little bit too between the scenes,
Mhm.
which I really liked. So I thought that was very, very well done.
Me too. With monster lore, we both gave it a 5. They did a good job explaining the monster lore in this one, and it was accurate.
Yep, exactly what I was thinking. In universe makes total sense. What's happening here? The bones need to be burned. Well, if you believe that it was his bones, but the hook had to be burned, so anything silver had to be burned, and then also just like the way that he was possessing things or like following people around, it all made a lot of sense. Even the rock salt thing made a lot of sense. So I really liked this episode in terms of lore very well.
Character development, we both gave it a 2.
Uh-huh.
We didn't really learn anything about them. Nothing new, any at least.
Yeah, the only thing, like, close to character development was, like, the Sam not being ready to move on thing, but that was already been kind of being established throughout, like, the rest of the thing, so
Mhm.
it's, like, not really new news. And I thought that the reason why I put it even lower than, like, a 3 or something is because, like you said, we're getting kinda stale on the things that we are learning. Isn't re Nothing new is being learned in the past couple episodes. And also, this episode completely contradicts the last episode with who is the skeptical one and who's the not
Mm.
skeptical one, and all of this stuff. And I'm just like, what? Why is it so different? Like, it's the same argument on both episodes. I don't know if it's
Yeah.
intentional to show that, like, they're both like this, but it just, like, felt really weird to me. So I bumped it down a bit.
Yeah, same. That's exactly my reasons. Visual and direction, here we have a change. I gave it a 5 and you gave it a 4.
Yeah, I thought overall it was very good. I like the fire on fire, like you said, like the back and forth shots of the hookman and the
Mhm.
necklace burning, which I thought was really fun. I liked that a lot. I really liked the whole aren't you glad they turned on the lights shots too. Like those are all very fun, but it just didn't like blow me away either. Like I wasn't like, wow, that's a sweet shot. I was like, that's good. I like it. 4 is pretty good. Didn't get it up to 5 for me.
Yeah, I get that. There was so many scenes I liked, and that's why I gave it a 5. Like, I thought the
Uh-huh.
opening scene was really nice, and I knew when she got out of the car, right, she was gonna turn around and see him because that's just how slashers are. But it was still cool to see, and then I mentioned a few other times that there were really cool shots. So I was like, "This
Mhm.
is a 5."
Yeah, definitely.
Emotional impact, we both gave it a 2. Mm, it
Yeah.
wasn't really.
There wasn't many strong emotions here, like, from any character really. Like, closest thing was Lori had a lot of strong emotions, but they weren't like they didn't make me feel anything. Like, nothing in this episode really made me feel much other than, like, the Sam melodrama at the end. That's why it wasn't a 1. Like, I was debating a 1 for a while, but I'm like, "I'll give it a little bit for the melodrama of Sam."
And, I felt emotion with the boyfriend and the dad because I didn't like them at all.
That's valid. I guess negative emotions and also emotional impact. Would that increase the score or decrease the score?
I think it's just, if you feel leaving emotional, rewatchability, we both gave it a 4.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
would rewatch this episode. It's very fun,
me
very
too.
concise. Doesn't matter about the story. Like that's why the rewatchability ones are going to be the ones that either like have really cool story things or like have
Mhm.
none. Because the ones that have none, like you can just watch whenever and it doesn't matter. Like this episode, you can watch literally whenever and it's fine. And it's fun. I like the filler
Yeah,
stuff too, like the slasher of the Hookman. So
but then when you think of, like, some of the filler episodes, like Dead in the Water is just boring, so you
yeah,
wouldn't rewatch it.
yeah.
Um
But I would watch this one. This one has a good pacing and everything.
Salt and Sass, I gave it a 3, you gave it a 4.
Yeah, I actually bumped it up after our review of this because there was a lot of one-liners that actually got a chuckle out of me, mostly from Dean. Dean was like killing it this episode in terms of his
Mhm.
one-liners just to the camera and like so like just to himself even. There's just so many that I was just like, you know what? As we're going through it, I'm like, this was really funny episode. So I'll give it actually more points for Salt and
Huh,
Sass.
that makes sense. Yeah, I thought there was some good banter as well, but nothing, like, too iconic stood out to me. So, our average scores and our combined scores are exactly the same, a 3.71 out of 5.
Indeed, really good episode. Really solid episode. Like I
Mhm,
said, we watch it again in pretty quickly. So like I think this is overall very very good.
me too. Yeah. Do you have any
Any
other
final
thoughts?
thoughts?
Oh, we both asked each other.
Jinx.
No, I am good.
Well, that brings us to the end of season 1, episode 7, The Hook Man then.
Thank you for joining us this week.
Yes, thank you for joining us this week as we unraveled some urban legends and the Hook Man. Next week, we're off to a new subdivision where the homes come with a cursed bug problem. Disgusting. So whenever you're ready, we'll see you in those bug infested archives. Bye.